Om Akhandam Satchidanandam Avang Manasagocharam Atmanam Akhiladharam Ashraye Bhishta Siddhai. So in Vedantasara, we were on text number 39. We are done up to 39. It's important to take a quick look back and see what we have accomplished so far. Vedanta says that it will be taught by the method of adhyaropa apavada, which means superimposition and desuperimposition. So what is adhyaropa and what is apavada? What is superimposition? It is taking the reality to be not what it is, taking the rope to be the snake, for example. So you take the absolute Brahman to be this world. We are the absolute, but we take ourselves to be this body, mind, these persons. So that's superimposition, and that's an error, and that has to be corrected. What is the correction? The negation, that is called apavada, desuperimposition. What is that like? It's like recognizing that it's not a snake, it's a rope. Recognizing that it's not the universe, it is nothing other than Brahman, the absolute. I am that absolute. So that is the negation, that is desuperimposition. That's going to be the whole process, and that's the heart of all that goes on in Advaita Vedanta. For that, the author so first has to define what he means by real and unreal. Note that the process is always, he introduces new terms and then immediately defines them. And that's the importance of this text. Why are we at all doing this particular text? We have already done Drigdrishya Viveka or Aparokshanubhuti, which are wonderful teachings of, that they present Advaita Vedanta in a, I would say, much more interesting way than this dry little textbook. But what is important about this textbook is, it just is a book of definitions. So when we talk about Advaita Vedanta, we need to know very precisely, what are we talking about? What exactly is God? What exactly is a sentient being, us, Jiva? What are we exactly? What are we talking about? What is liberation? What is enlightenment? So all these things, you'll be surprised to see how, with what precision they have been defined. And it's a wonderful textbook which sets out the essence of Advaita Vedanta in a finished form. After centuries of tradition, finally putting it all together in a form to which students can be introduced, or through which students can be introduced to Advaita Vedanta. That's what this does. And this also gives us a fine foundation for entry into the original texts of Advaita Vedanta, the Upanishads, which is what we will do later on. So the definitions are important. It's going to be definitions all the way through. So definitions are very important. And it's a joy actually to get so much clarity. Whether you agree or not, first of all, let's agree what we are talking about. And that's wonderful in itself. So much in religion is so vague. And you will see how precise Advaita Vedanta is. You may disagree, but we are very clear about what you are agreeing to or disagreeing to. All right. So he just said that taking the real to be the unreal, that is superimposition, and taking the unreal back to finding out the real in the unreal, that is desuperimposition or negation. So that begs the question, what is real and what is unreal? In Advaita Vedanta, the real is the absolute, existence, consciousness, bliss, non-dual, Brahman. And everything else, remember, just text number 33. Everything else, starting from ignorance downwards means products of ignorance. All of it is unreal. Then he goes on to define what is this ignorance we are talking about. And that was text number, I think it was 34, very important, but pretty vague also. If you see, it's pretty abstract and vague. We are talking about Maya, about cosmic ignorance, so it doesn't get any more precise than that. Having defined that, now introduces new players into the field, into the game. The first new player to enter is Ishvara, or God, the God of religion. So what is God? We were introduced to this ignorance has, ajnanam, has a total aspect and an individual aspect. It is divisible. Unlike Brahman, unlike the absolute is not divisible. It is one reality. You can't have parts of Brahman in Advaita Vedanta. You can't have different qualities. It's beyond qualities, beyond attributes. It is just one non-dual reality. But ignorance can be divided. There can be a totality, which is called Maya, or it can have little parts, infinite number of little parts. So it said in text number 35, this ignorance, which we defined in 34, can be spoken of as a totality, one, or as many parts. When you speak of it as one, it gave two examples. One is the forest example, the other one is the lake example. As a large number of trees, taken individually, you call them trees. Taken all together, you call them one forest. So one forest or many trees, many individual ignorances or one cosmic ignorance. Another example was the lake example. You can take billions of droplets of water, or you can take the whole thing together and call it one lake. Similarly, you can have many ignorances, if that's a word, or put it all together, have one total ignorance or Maya. What is the point of all of this? So it says this totality of ignorance, call it Maya, is extraordinarily powerful. And we were introduced to when consciousness is associated with this totality of ignorance, which is called Maya, consciousness limited by Maya is God. So that's the point of all this work. Consciousness, which consciousness? Brahman, which was we introduced at the beginning, the one reality. That one reality, limited by Maya, is called God. Immediately you may ask, but didn't you say that the consciousness alone is real and the Maya is, and whatever you call it, is unreal? So how can it limit? So it really cannot limit. You're right. But from our perspective, it seems to be limited. Our perspective is already we are within the, the hypnotized, superimposed state. So we have to accept that we are under the influence of this Maya or ignorance. So that absolute reality, limited by Maya, is called God. And we got four names for this consciousness, limited by Maya, which is called God. Four names we are introduced to. Avyaktam, the unmanifest. Antaryami, the inner controller. Jagat Karanam, the creator or the cause of the world. Ishvara, the Lord, which is the common name for God in all theistic religions. Four names. For what? The absolute reality, consciousness. Limited by often I write Brahman or Nirguna Brahman plus Maya is equal to Saguna Brahman. But that plus does not mean it is something more. It is something greater. No, it's actually a limitation. All right. And this Maya, you can call it the uniform which the Absolute puts on. Now it becomes God. You can say the Absolute is playing God. How do you play God? You put on the uniform of God. What is the uniform of God? Maya. And this uniform, this Maya, has four names again. I'm on text number 39. That's the last thing we did last time. What are the four names of Maya or this uniform of God? It is called Karana Sharira, the causal body. The names are very evocative. Consciousness with a causal body becomes the cause of the universe. So consciousness with a causal body, not casual body, causal body. It's not casual wear, it's business wear actually for God, for the Absolute. So putting on business wear, it gets down to business to create this universe. So causal body, Karana Sharira, one name. Second name, Anandamaya Kosha, because it's full of bliss and it, like a sheath, it covers consciousness. So it is called the bliss sheath. Third name, Sushupti. It is the cessation of the entire universe. At that level, remember, no universe is there yet. It's only consciousness and Maya. So that Maya is the cessation of the universe. The universe comes to an end there and begins from there also. But at the level of Maya, there is no apparent, no universe. Nothing is there. It's just consciousness plus Maya. So it is Sushupti, deep sleep. And then the fourth name is Layasthanam. It is the place of dissolution. Dissolution of what? The physical universe and the subtle universe. All of them become dissolved in the causal universe. What is the causal universe? Maya. So four names we have got for Maya and four names for for Saguna Brahman or Ishvara. What were the four names for Ishvara? Abhyaktam, the unmanifest, the Antaryami, inner controller, and what else was there? The Jagat Karanam, cause of the universe, and Ishvara, the Lord of the universe. And for Maya, we have got four names. It is the Karana Shariram, the causal body. Notice, God is called the cause of the universe, Jagat Karanam. And Maya is the causal body, that is the power or the vehicle or the work clothes of God, by which God creates this universe. And then it is called Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. It is also called the Sushupti, the state of deep sleep. But this is cosmic sleep, not our sleep. And Layasthanam, the place of dissolution, or the state of dissolution of the entire universe. Now, let us move on. What's going to come next? Us. So one player has been introduced, that is Ishvara or God. The next player to be introduced will be the Jiva, us. Text number 40. Yatha vanasya vyashtiya viprayena vriksha ityanekatvam anekatva vyapadesho yatha va jalashayasya vyashtiya viprayena jalaniti tatha ajnanasya vyashtiya viprayena tadanekatva vyapadesha indro mayabhi pururupayate ityadi shrutehe. What does that mean? As a forest, from the standpoint of the units that compose it, may be designated as a number of trees, and as a reservoir from the same point may be spoken of as a quantities of water. So also ignorance, when denoting separate units, is spoken of as many, as in such Shruti passages as Indra through Maya appears as of many forms. Okay, what does it mean? Getting ready to trot out, to bring on stage us. How do you do that? The same absolute consciousness associated with Maya is God. Same absolute consciousness limited by or associated with parts of Maya is us. Each part of Maya, when the same absolute shines through each part of Maya, it becomes an individual being like each of us. So now he's going to talk about Maya as having many parts. He's proceeding very logically and slowly. Example, go back to example. Forest example, forest and tree example. A water, a reservoir and drops of water example. Why these examples? I mentioned there are two. So behind this is a lot of groundwork which has been done. There are two sub-schools of Advaita Vedanta. One, the school of Padmapada. Padmapada was Shankaracharya's first disciple. Padmapada and his favorite disciple. Padmapada Acharya, a monk whose school is known as the Vivarana school. And the other school is the school of Vachaspati Mishra, called the Bhamati school. And these two schools, they have different views on many topics, several topics. One of the major ones being, what is the relationship of the absolute to this universe? How is the one related to the many? One Brahman and this manifold universe, how are they, what exactly, how do they work together? How does it happen? So one is the limitation model, the other one is called the reflection model. Reflection model, you can, the example of the water and sky. So sky reflected in water, or maybe sun reflected in a pot of water. That's an example of a reflection model. It is the absolute reflected in Maya. So that is how the one becomes the many or appears as the many. The limitation model is that it is the absolute which appears through the limitations of Maya. Example would be the sky and the space enclosed in various pots or various houses. So the sky itself and the space apparently enclosed in various pots. The space cannot be enclosed by pots. You may say, why not? We have so many pots and there's space in them. No. Pots and bottles and houses and whatever seems to enclose space does not actually enclose space. The pot, the space is not in the pot. The pot is in space. Think about it. If you have a glass of water and you move it, clearly the water is in the glass. It's when you move the glass, the water goes with it. Otherwise, you would make a big wet mess every time you try to move the glass. But the space, suppose you're an empty glass, the space which seems to be in the glass isn't the space in the glass when you move the glass, doesn't the space travel with it? No, it doesn't. It's the glass which the glass or the pot which travels through space. Space doesn't travel with the glass. So space seems to be enclosed in pots or glasses or houses, but it's not actually. In the same way, pure consciousness seems to be enclosed in Maya and bodies and minds and all of that. It isn't. The many just seem to be like demarcations or apparent limitations of the absolute. That's one theory. The other theory is the absolute is reflected in Maya, and Maya is many. I mean, it can be divided, so the absolute can appear to be many individual beings, many entities. See, one undivided existence can appear as infinite number of existing things. One unbroken consciousness can now appear as endless series of conscious perceptions, thoughts, feelings, ideas. One limitless bliss or value or joy can now appear as the continuous flow of sukha and dukkha, pleasure and pain. So the two theories. Story time. I might have repeated these stories other times, but it's a good time because I've introduced these two theories. They are called Pratibimbavada, reflection theory, and Avachedavada, the limitation theory. Sub-schools of Advaita Vedanta. So the two stories of Padmapada and Vachaspati Mishra. So Padmapada Acharya was Shankaracharya's favorite disciple. He got this name. Padmapada means lotus foot. So how did he get this strange name, lotus feet? His original name was Sanandan, and he was very devoted to Shankaracharya. And obviously Shankaracharya favored him. The other disciples got a little jealous, and Shankaracharya wanted to teach them why Sanandan is so favored. And so one day they were in the mountains. I think there was a fast flowing river between them. Shankaracharya and the other disciples were on this bank. And suddenly Shankaracharya called out to Sanandan, Sanandan, come here. I want you here. Now Sanandan, who had gone to the other bank for some work, when the Guru is calling, he did not hesitate. He did not wait to go around to the bridge and come and cross. Rather, he walked straight into the river because he has to cross over and meet the Guru, because the Guru is ordering him to do so. As he walked on the river, he didn't drown, nor did his feet get wet, but everywhere he put his foot, a big lotus bloomed, and he walked across on a bridge of lotuses. All right, I know, but it's a nice story. Now, that's why he's known as Padmapada, the lotus-footed one. So that was the source of his name. Now, how did this school originate? After Shankaracharya composed his great commentaries, he composed his commentary on the Brahma Sutras, known as the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. Now, further explanations. This is how Indian philosophy progresses. The original texts, commentaries, sub-commentaries, sub-commentaries. So Shankaracharya has written the crucial commentary establishing a non-dualistic interpretation of the Brahma Sutras of Badarayana. Now, further explanation is necessary. Who will write the sub-commentary on Shankaracharya's commentary? And of course, the natural choice was Padmapada. And Shankaracharya entrusted him that write a sub-commentary, a tika, which will explain what I have explained already in further detail. So he did that. Padmapada, he did that. And he explained, and Shankaracharya heard some of it. And Shankaracharya praised it, the way the commentary was. You have really captured the spirit of my teachings. Now, around this time, so these are long, all these stories are pretty long. Padmapada wanted to go on pilgrimage. So Shankaracharya said, all right, you blessed him, you go ahead. And Padmapada went to different places. He went to his home where he had come from in the south of India. And his uncle was there. And his uncle received him. And his uncle was eager to know, who is this new young teacher you have become a disciple of? Shankara was only in his teens. So tell us about him and tell us about his teachings. So Padmapada explained non-dualism, non-dualistic teaching, Advaita. And his uncle was a dualist, Dvaitavadi. So he was really upset by this powerful teaching of non-dualism. He said, this will ruin our philosophy. So what do we do? Padmapada had read out from his book, excerpts from his book, which was an explanation of Shankaracharya's commentary on the Brahma Sutras. So his uncle said, this is a very precious book. Please leave it with me. And don't take the risk taking it with you. Go on your pilgrimage, come back. On the way back, you can collect this book. I'll keep it safely. So the unsuspecting Padmapada left it with his uncle, went off on a tour and came back. When he came back, he found his uncle's house was burnt down. Now this crooked man had gone to the extent of burning down his own house so that he could claim that the volume was burnt. He wept and wailed and said, I'm so sorry, nephew, but your masterpiece is, I don't care about my house, but your masterpiece is burnt. And it's such a terrible loss to humanity. And Padmapada said, oh, uncle, don't worry. I've got the entire thing in memory, so you don't have to worry. I remember the whole thing. To the horror of the uncle. The uncle, now not to be put down, he devised an even more devious plan. So he invited Padmapada to dinner and he poisoned Padmapada with a kind of amnesia inducing poison. So after that meal, Padmapada forgot the entire text. So he was very frustrated, very despondent, went his way back to his master, Shankaracharya, and told him this lamentable tale. And Shankaracharya said, well, don't worry. What you had told me before you left, I remember all of that, word for word, and I can recite it to you, you can write it down. So they had prodigious memories in ancient times, it seems. So it's like downloading from the cloud or whatever, no data loss. So the point of the whole story is, a part of what Padmapada had written was recovered because Shankaracharya remembered it. Whatever Padmapada had composed before setting off on that ill-advised journey. So that part is called Panchapadika. Panchapadika, the 5 sections. So it's not a comprehensive commentary on the Brahma Sutra Bhashya of Shankaracharya. Remember where we are. The sutras composed by Badarayana Vyasa. Shankara's non-dualistic commentary, Shankara Bhashya. And on that, Padmapada's Panchapadika, the 5-section commentary, sub-commentary. Again, so what? Now this sub-commentary became the basis for further teaching of non-dualism after Shankaracharya and his disciples had passed away. A later generations, a great scholarly monk called Prakashatma Yati. Prakashatma Yati, he composed a sub-commentary on that called the Panchapadika Vivarana. Panchapadika, an expansion on the Panchapadika. So what do we have now? Sutra, Shankaracharya's Bhashya, Padmapada's Panchapadika, and then the Prakashatma Yati's Panchapadika Vivarana, expansion on the Panchapadika. This Vivarana became the name of the sub-school of Vedanta. So it is called the Vivarana school. The Vivarana school. And if you want to pin us down, Swami, which school of Vedanta, of Advaita, what philosophy do you subscribe to? Advaita Vedanta. Which school of Advaita Vedanta do you subscribe to? It will be this one, because the lineage of monks coming down from Shankaracharya, they followed this. What about the other school? The other school came about 200 years after Shankaracharya. There was a great scholar, Vachaspati Mishra. He was not a monk, he was a householder. This extraordinary scholar. He's a landmark scholar in Indian philosophy. He has the title Sarvatantra Swatantracharya. What does it mean? A very imposing title. A master of all the philosophies. So Swatantra means independent, who has independent access to all the philosophies. So he has significant works. Vachaspati Mishra has significant works on the Nyaya philosophy, on the Mimamsa philosophy, on Patanjali's yoga, on Sankhya, all important works, and even studied even till today. Now, what happened was, the story goes, so he was getting married. And it seems in those days, in the marriage ceremony, there would be a part of the, so Hindu marriages are unending. They go on and on and on. So there was this joke somewhere that in America, the group of Hindus invited their white friends to the Hindu marriage. And the white people were very happy. Oh, the color and the music and so on and so forth. And then 6 hours later is that, oh God, when is it going to end? And so it seems in those ancient times, there was, again, stories. One of the ceremonies would be a scholarly debate, which the groom and the bride would listen to on some topic of spiritual, of philosophy. So in that marriage, it was a discussion on the newly emerging commentaries, on Vedanta, written by Shankara and his disciples and all. So the Pandits were discussing this. And Vachaspati Mishra, he was very annoyed. He said, they're getting it wrong. And they're just not right what they're explaining. I'm sure all the relatives would have said, hush, you keep quiet, get married first. So there and then Vachaspati Mishra vowed that once this marriage ceremony was over, he would put it right. He would compose such a textbook, such a book on Vedanta, which would, for generations to come, nobody would have any more problems understanding Vedanta. They would not make such foolish mistakes. So right after marriage, he got to work. Day and night, he began to compose this commentary on Shankara's commentary on the Brahma Sutras. So Brahma Sutras, Shankara's commentary, Vachaspati Mishra's sub-commentary. Now, long time passed. One day, Vachaspati Mishra was slogging away. Again, story. He was slogging away at his writing his commentary. It was dark. And he saw this lady enter with a lamp and place the lamp. So he was taken aback. He said, at this time in the evening, a woman in my house, who are you, lady? And why are you here? She sighed and said, oh, I am your wife. And this is the first time you have spoken to me in 20 years, or 30 years or whatever. And he was taken aback and he said, we got married so many decades ago. And you have been, it's just a story. I mean, he's been so involved in writing the sub-commentary on the Advaita Vedanta. He never even spoke to his wife. So he was very sorry about this. And he asked, what is your name? And she said, my name is Bhamati. And he said, all right, I haven't been able to do anything for you. This much I can do. I will name this book Bhamati. And as long as Vedanta is studied, your name will be remembered by everybody. Everybody is going to read this book. And he was right. Even till today, 1,000 years, he lived around 1080. So 1,000 years after Vachaspati and Bhamati passed away, even now, the traditional scholars in India who study Vedanta, their Advaita Vedanta, they read the Bhamati. That's the indispensable book. I have a copy right here. I can show it to you. Can you see this? It says Bhamati of Vachaspati Mishra. Yes. So it's named after that lady 1,000 years ago. And it's a book with, so it goes like this. There's a Sanskrit written by Vachaspati Mishra and with an English translation on the other side. Again, what's the point? What's the relation to us? This Bhamati became the basis for another school of Vedanta, another school of Advaita Vedanta. So you had now two sub-schools of Advaita Vedanta. The Vivarana school, which traced its origins back to Padmapada, and the Bhamati school, which traces its origins back to this book written by Vachaspati Mishra. And why did we at all talk about this? The two examples come from these two different schools. The reflection example, the sky and water example, reservoir example, comes from Padmapada's approach, and the limitation example, that means the sky and the enclosed, and the forest and trees, for example, comes from Vachaspati school. So that's it. Now, it's good to know these stories. These stories are handed down from the traditional pundits. They're full of such interesting stories. Okay. Yatha vanasya, I'm on text number 40. Look at the Sanskrit. Yatha vanasya vyashti aviprayena vriksha iti anekatva vyapadesha. Just as if you take a forest individually, if you see the components, you will call them trees, plural, many, not one forest, but many trees. Or yathava, or take the other example, jalashayasya vyashti aviprayena jalaniti, or take a reservoir. Instead of saying a reservoir, a lake, say billions of droplets of water, many, many drops of water. Exactly like that. Tatha ajnanasya vyashti aviprayena, this cosmic ignorance, the power of God, that can be seen as many, many individual ignorances. Anekatva Vepadesha. You can say that there are many ignorances. Again, he has to give a supporting quote from the Upanishads or from the Vedas. Is there anywhere which says that there can be many ignorances? He says, yes, the Rig Veda, the most ancient of the Vedas, says, Indro Maya bhi pururupayate. Indra by Maya assumed many forms. So what? The little Sanskrit grammar here, Maya bhi is the plural of Maya. So an interesting use of Maya. Usually Maya is used in singular, but here it's used in plural, which means ignorance can be seen as many. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of making a point that ignorance can be subdivided, or Maya can be subdivided. 41. Let me introduce the Jivas. Let us come on stage and then we can take the questions. 41. Atra vyasta samasta vyapitvena vyasti shamastita vyapadeshaha. Ignorance has been designated as individual and collective on account of its pervading the units and the aggregate. Yeah. So just like in each individual there's ignorance, so it is called separate, many, or collective, total, because it is associated with the totality, with consciousness, one consciousness, and all ignorance together. Now, this individual ignorance, the one which we have, iyam vyashti nikrishtopaditaya malina sattva pradhana. This is text number 42. The individual ignorance on account of its association with the inferior being is characterized by impure sattva. Remember, the total ignorance, Maya, was predominantly sattvic, and it had many extraordinary qualities. But the individual one which we have is a pretty miserable kind of thing. It is very low powered, let us say, let's put it that way. The example of the cobra, which has all the poison in its mouth, and the poison doesn't do anything to the cobra. It's in fact is the power of the cobra. But when it puts a little bit of it into its prey, into a frog or an unfortunate mouse, that little bit is enough to knock out the mouse. It's not the power of the mouse. It incapacitates the mouse. Similarly for us, that absolute consciousness, the infinite existence, consciousness, bliss, that when associated, limited, passing through, this tiny bit of ignorance now appears like us, not particularly inspiring creatures. So what happens to us? 43. Etadupahitam chaitanyam alpagyatva anishwaratvadi gunakam pragya ityuchyate ekagyana Consciousness associated with this has limited knowledge and is devoid of the power of lordship. It is called pragya on account of its being the illuminator of individual ignorance. What does this mean? Consciousness associated with limited or one bit of ignorance. Etad upahitam chaitanyam. Consciousness associated with or covered with one limited ignorance now gets the qualities alpagya, limited knowledge. Look at the knowledge compared to the omniscience of God. What about the absolute pure consciousness, limited knowledge or omniscient? Doesn't apply. Those questions does not apply. But for God, God is omniscient and knows everything. Us, we know very little, and even that which we know is doubtful, and it is earned with great effort and quickly lost. So alpagya, we know very little. Then, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita, 4th chapter, when Krishna announces that he's an avatar, he points this out to Arjuna. Arjuna asks, how is it that you are saying you have taught Vedanta in ancient times and you are teaching it now? You were born just like me a few years ago. How could you have taught the ancients, Vedanta to the ancients? And Krishna says, both you and I have had many births. I know them all. You don't. So this I know them all points to this, that the omniscience of God and the little knowledge of us, of worldly creatures, of Jiva, sentient beings. Anishwaratva is a very important word. Powerlessness. We are powerless. We are helpless. We are swept along by our karma. We are like little creatures being swept along in a river in spate. So Ishvara is not powerless. Ishvara is all powerful. Everything happens by the will of God. Very little happens by our own will. We are entirely subject to nature, and nature is subject to God. Adi, etc. So all a host of miserable attributes are associated with the sentient being, with us. We are powerful in certain ways, but compared to the power of God, it's nothing. It's really miserable. And what is our name? Pragya. If you go back to Mandukya, you will see this is a name you're familiar with. The deep sleeper is called Pragya. So what is he talking about here? He says you're talking about us. What kind of us? This is not something that we recognize. Consciousness associated with individual ignorance. What else is talking about? If you talked about a body or a mind, I would have understood. But what is this consciousness associated with individual ignorance? He's talking about our deep sleep experience. What we are in deep sleep, that has been pointed out. This is the first time it's being anchored to our daily experience. What we experience in deep sleep, that is what is the seed form of the individual sentient being. It is called pragya, consciousness which experiences deep sleep. Eka jnana avabhasakatvat. It illumines one ignorance. So consciousness in each of us illumines one ignorance. One in the countable sense, one, and so many ignorances. But consciousness, when it illumines all of it together, is God. Consciousness which illumines one bit of ignorance in each of our deep sleep, it is called a Jiva, sentient being, individual sentient being. Let me just do 44. We'll do 44, 45, and 46. Okay. Asya pragyatvam aspashtopaditaya anati prakashakatvat. It is called pragya because it is deficient in illumination on account of its association with a dull limiting adjunct. Dull limiting adjunct is that one single ignorance. That is called a dull limiting adjunct. And it's called pragya. So the word pragya can be etymologically analyzed in different ways. Here it is in Sanskrit, prayanagya, almost unknowing, which is our experience in deep sleep. Now, just like in the case of God and Maya, in our case also, we will get 4 names. And our dress, the uniform we have put on in deep sleep, that will also get 4 names. What are the names? You can now see the correspondence with, it's very symmetric, correspondence with the case of Ishvara, God, and the individual being, sentient being. 45. Asyapi yam ahankara ahankaradi karanatvat karana shariram ananda prachuratvat koshavat achadakatvat cha anandamaya koshaha sarva uparamatvat sushupti ataiva sthula shukshma sharira prapancha layasthanam iti cha uchyate. So the individual ignorance which we have, each of us, it is known as the causal body. Why the causal body? It is can be compared to, it goes back to our Mandukya study, where in deep sleep, it's the causal state from which emerges like a sprout, the subtle body in dreams, and the uh, physical body in the waking. So it's like the seed, and therefore it is called Karana Sharira. What is Karana Sharira? That ignorance in deep sleep. Whose ignorance in deep sleep? Each of us. So that is our own personal causal body. Maya is the causal body of God. The individual ignorance is our own individual causal body. And it's a tiny part of the cosmic causal body. Then Ananda Prachuratvat. It is the locus of, it's full of bliss. Bliss in the sense of restfulness. Not that we are having a party in deep sleep. If you are, then you are not in deep sleep. But it's very restful in the sense there's no trouble in deep sleep. It's a place of absolute rest. It's the deepest rest that we know of naturally. So Ananda Prachuratva, because it is the place of absolute rest or blissfulness. Koshavatachadakatvat, because it covers like a sheath. What does it cover like a sheath? I, the consciousness. I'm covered like a sheath. It's almost like little kids, we used to sleep in winter. In India, we'd put these thick blankets, and it would be fun to pull it over our heads. And then you can't see anything. Even if you open your eyes inside that blanket, it's totally dark. You can't see anything. It's like you might as well keep your eyes closed. So in deep sleep is something like that. And the blanket is like this Anandamaya Kosha. So it is called Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. Sarva Uparamatvat, Sushupti, because it's the cessation of all activity, an external world, physical activity, the senses, mind, all of it ceases in deep sleep. So it is called Sushupti. It is deep sleep. It's the state of deep sleep. It is also Sthula Sukshma Sharira Prapancha Laya Sthanam Iti. So it is the place where the physical body and the subtle body are dissolved. That means dissolved in the sense from your individual perspective. You don't have an experience of a world. You don't have an experience of a physical body. You don't have an experience of a mind. 4 names for your individual ignorance. What are the 4 names? Karana Sharira, causal body. Anandamaya Kosha, bliss sheath. Sushupti, deep sleep. Layasthanam, the place of dissolution. 4 names. Exactly like the cosmic case. In the deep sleep, okay, before we go on to this, all right, let me do number 46 and I'll take the questions. Tadanim eto Ishvara Pragyau Chaitanya Pradiptabhi Ati Sukshmabhir Ajnana Vrittibhir Anandam Anubhavata Ananda Bhukcheto Mukha Pragyah Iti Shrutehe Sukham Aham Aswapsam Nakinchid Avedisham Ityutthitasya Paramarsha Upapattescha. In the deep state of dreamless sleep or deep sleep, both Ishvara and Pragya, both God and the individual being, through a very subtle function of ignorance, illumined by consciousness, enjoy happiness or rest. As in the Shruti passage, Pragya, the enjoyer of bliss, with consciousness for its aid, is the third aspect. This again from Mandukya. As also from such experience of a man awaking from dreamless sleep as, I slept happily, I did not know anything. So what has been just said here? What is it like in experience? Where do we experience this thing? So notice your deep sleep. In your deep sleep, what happens? There is no trouble. The worldly troubles come to an end. It is deeply restful. And we wake up from that and we say, I slept happily, I did not know anything. That I slept happily, that I did not know anything. This was also an experience. It is not that something that you infer or you make a calculation that I must have been sleeping. But no, it's actually an experience. How do you get that experience? He says, consciousness, Chaitanya Pradiptabhi. Consciousness illumines the state of deep sleep. but the mind is not functioning. How would you even remember such a thing? You have yourself said the physical body is at complete rest, the mind is dissolved, resolved at least, not active. Then how, if it's an experience, how would you even remember such a thing? So it makes a statement here. Ati sukshmabhirajnana vrittibhi. By the extremely subtle functionings of ignorance itself, in the causal body, in the Anandamaya Kosha. Remember, ignorance, causal body, Anandamaya Kosha, those are also dynamic. They're part of Maya, and there's a continuous change going on there. And so the experience, so-called experience of deep sleep, is recorded there, and it is recalled by the mind when it wakes up. So there is a kind of recording going on, but it's not memory as we know it, because mind is not active. You never have the memory of, I experienced deep sleep. Rather, it's like a proto memory. When you wake up, you don't feel that I was there, but yet distinctly it was a strange kind of an experience. Okay. And he's quoting from the Mandukya Upanishad. Ananda bhukcheto mukha pragyaha. Sukham aham aswapsam. I slept happily. Nakinchi ravedisham. I did not know anything. Uttitasya paramarsha. When you wake up, you have such a cognition. Okay. Now let's see what has come up in the discussions. Let us see the chat. I presume the bliss quality of Brahman, existence, consciousness, bliss, is different from the bliss sheath, Anandamaya Kosha. Is bliss the first sheath because of its proximity to the absolute, like the warmth being experienced in the proximity of fire? True. This is from Rick. Yes. So the bliss, when you say Anandamaya, that is different from Satchidananda. Different in the sense that Anandamaya means pervaded by bliss. So pervaded by bliss, it is not bliss itself. When you say it's a difference between existence itself and an existing thing, consciousness itself and a conscious experience. Similarly, Ananda and that which is pervaded by Ananda. So our causal body or the deep sleep experience is pervaded by Ananda, but it's not Ananda as in Brahman itself. That is deeper than this. And Kosha means sheath. Sheath means that which covers. So this one actually covers Brahman. There's a lot of discussion about this. According to Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is something beyond the Anandamaya Kosha. According to some other interpretations, the Anandamaya Kosha is the final reality. Consciousness, Anandamaya Kosha is the final reality. Those are the ones who accept only Ishvara. They do not accept a Nirguna Brahman, an absolute beyond Ishvara. They don't accept certain interpretations. Advaita Vedanta says no. Brahman or Satchidananda, the absolute, is beyond this or deeper than this. First sheath, because of its proximity to the absolute. Proximity is in the sense, yes, because there is nothing else between it and the absolute. It goes like this. Causal, subtle, gross. So right now, for example, we have the gross universe here and a gross or a physical body. But within this, we experience a subtle body. And these are not theories. You're actually experiencing. Here is a gross body. And here is a subtle body. Thoughts, feelings, emotions. Why are you distinguishing between them? It is obviously you have to distinguish between them. Note, there's a vast difference between the two. The physical body is something that everybody can see. It's publicly out there. The doctor can experience and examine it. In fact, the doctor may know more about it than you do. And the subtle body, thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas, my own personality, that is available only to you. It is directly experienced by consciousness. It cannot be objectified by others. Doctors don't know anything about what you are thinking, feeling, experiencing until you report it. They'll ask you. Notice, so for example, a very simple example is, I went for this eye test. So now they have very sophisticated devices. I had gone for an eye test when I was a kid, many, many years ago. And there they only had a chart with ABCD all jumbled up and you have to read off the letters. And that was the only thing they had. Nowadays, there's so many computer devices and so many scanning devices and things like that. And so they they can do very fine tracking of what's going on in the lens and all of that. But finally, they have to say, so Swami, how does it look to you? Why are you asking me? If it's just a physical thing, then it should be available to you in your sophisticated device. You needn't ask me. If you're studying my liver, you don't have to ask me. But when you're studying something like perception, there are two aspects to it. There's a physical body, eyes and nerves and the lens, which you, the doctor, know better than me. But there is a subtle body aspect to it. The perception, the mind, which is seeing with the help of the sense organs. And you're asking, how does it look to you, to your subtle body, to the mind, which only you can talk about. So subtle body and physical body are different. And then we have a third kind of experience, which we don't talk about because it seems very mysterious and unremarkable, which is deep sleep experience. So that is causal body. Yeah. And Vedanta says all those are uniforms. It's an overcoat, the physical body, and it's your shirt, which is the subtle body, and it's your vest, which you are wearing, which is the causal body. But you are not any of those. Is this cosmic ignorance, Cordelia is asking, behind the creation of this? Yes. Brahman plus cosmic ignorance. Brahman plus Maya. Maya is the limitation of the absolute and also the Shakti of Brahman. Absolutely. How do we understand Shakti as limitation? Yes. From our perspective, Shakti or Maya is not limitation. It is glorious. It is tremendously powerful. It's what makes God, God. Omniscient, omnipresent, all-powerful, omnipotent, and so on. But it's a limitation from the perspective of the absolute. From the perspective of infinite existence, consciousness, bliss, with Maya, then it becomes God. So it is a kind of limitation. It is, in the sense, it gives it all these glorious powers, but all of those are in the realm of appearance. They are not the reality. Let's put it this way. It is not reality as it is. What is reality as it is? Non-dual Brahman. And what is Ishvara? Brahman covered with Maya. Yeah, let's put it this way. Brahman covered with Maya. The screen as it is, the movie screen, covered with light and sound, is glorious. It gives you a cinema, but it's not the screen as it is. In that way only I'm saying but it gives you the possibility of playing so many movies. That's there. So it is the Shakti of God, Maya. Vivaran school ascribed to it's a limitation model reflection. Vivaran school follows the reflection model, Pratibimbavada. And the Bhamati school follows the Avachedavada, or the limitation model. And there are many other differences. There are more than a dozen different differences. This is just one of them. These are major differences. Does the 5 koshas approach apply to all embodied beings? Yes. 5 koshas are we will come across them later on. But we know the Anandamaya kosha, the Vijnanamaya kosha, the Manomaya kosha, the Pranamaya kosha, and the Anandamaya kosha, the Annamaya kosha. So far, what have we got? We have got only Anandamaya, the first one. The next others will come. All of these 5 can be reduced to the 3 bodies: causal body, subtle body, and physical body, gross body. Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, Sthula Sharira. We'll see all of that. It will all come. It's going to be built up slowly. The 4 names for Maya and the names for ignorance associated with Pragya are the same? Yes. Notice the symmetry. The same names have been applied, one for the totality and one for individual. Cobra and its poison. So in text 42, Cobra and its poison it's not in the book itself, but it is an example given by Sri Ramakrishna. What is the example? A very good example. All the poison is in the mouth or the glands of the cobra, but it does not harm the cobra. In fact, it is the power of the cobra. The poison is the power of the cobra. But even a tiny bit of that poison, when the cobra bites a mouse or a frog or something, it's enough to knock out or kill that poor little mouse. So similarly, all of Maya together is the power of God. You see, the why we are using this is the words Ajnana, ignorance. Someone might say, little bit of ignorance is bad. And then God has got the totality of ignorance. So God, if I am a fool because of a little bit of ignorance, God must be the biggest fool. No, it's just the opposite. There, all that cosmic ignorance all taken together is the power of God. It enables God to hide God's own real nature, which is Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, and project it as this universe. Just like the cobra, with all the poison in its mouth, has no problem at all, and in fact uses it to catch its prey. In Sankhya, many Purushas, here many individual ignorances. Can you speak about this? Yeah. So if you stop at multiple Purushas, that's it. But you see, here we have started from something deeper than multiple Purushas. We started with one consciousness. Now we are saying, how does one consciousness appear as many? It's like one sky reflected in many droplets of water. So it's Advaitic, not Sankhyan. Okay, so many questions are there. From the perspective of an enlightened soul who is beyond ignorance, there is no Ishvara, or maybe that there is no need for God for such a person. Yes and no. From an enlightened person's perspective, first of all, then it's not a person. As long as you're talking about a person, you have to talk about God also. You see, the two came together, Jiva and Ishvara, right now. Beyond the personhood of the person and the Godhood of God is that absolute. So then there is only this absolute existence consciousness place. Does that mean there's no God? You have to be careful there. When you say there's only the absolute, then what are you? You will say, I am that absolute, aham brahmasmi. Then what is God? God is also that absolute. You can't say there's only the absolute and I am the absolute and God is nothing. Let's get rid of him. No. If you are the absolute, then God is also the same absolute, and you and God are one reality. That is the ultimate conclusion of Advaita Vedanta. There is one existence, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. Through Maya, appears as God and the individuals plural. Individuals, when they realize that one existence, they see God is nothing but that one existence, and we are also nothing but that one existence. And God does not become false in Advaita Vedanta. Careful. God's Godhood, or in Sanskrit, Ishwaratva, is dispensed with, not that God is demoted. God is promoted to the absolute. And as you promote yourself to the absolute, from the Jiva, individual sentient being, to the absolute, you see, I am the absolute, then God is also the absolute. And you and God are one at that level. What happens to the avarana aspect of Maya when? That is the thing. We will see that later. We have not yet seen the avarana, the veiling power. That's going to come later on. So we'll see that Maya has one of the powers of Maya is to veil the reality. That veiling is removed by knowledge. Notice, the projection of the universe continues. Even after you become enlightened, God will still project this universe for you. But the only thing is, God cannot, or Maya does not veil Brahman from you. You know that this universe is nothing but Brahman, and you are nothing but Brahman. But it continues to appear in this way. But the avarana, the veiling power, is overcome. Can you mention, Rama says, you mentioned about the causal body also being dynamic. Can you explain this, please? Yes. Dynamic in what sense? Not that it is hands and feet or it is thinking something, but the causal body is made of sattva, rajas, tamas. Because remember, ajnana is made of trigunatmika, sattva, rajas, tamas. And it's a tiny bit of that ajnana, so it's made of sattva, rajas, tamas. And this is continuously changing. Sattva is becoming rajas, rajas is becoming tamas, tamas is again becoming rajas, and sattva is changing. Because it's dynamic, it has the power, or so they say, of recording the experience of deep sleep. An experience within quotes. It's not an experience like normally I see something or hear something and I remember it. Not that way. All right. 2 hands were up.
Prabir Babu, you're next.
Maharaj Pranam, my question, I'm going to have, it's in my mind. I don't know how to express it. But the first question I have is that when we're talking about, when you're studying Vedantasara, I have this problem that as if we're trying to put, let me see how to, we're trying to visualize these things that were abstract before. And then the problem comes is how do I understand these things actually? I have a tendency of saying, okay, this is ignorance, this is mind, this is, and they're not really concrete things to grasp your hand.
All right, I get what you're trying to say. Don't worry about it. This Vedantasara will make it very concrete. You know what's going to happen now? Now they have introduced Ishvara and the Jiva. Next, they will show how Ishvara produces the world. The 5 elements will be produced. From the 5 elements, the subtle bodies, our mind and prana and everything will be constructed. And then the 5 gross elements from which the entire physical universe will be constructed. So when the whole process of superimposition, adhyaropa, culminates, you will arrive at where we are, a cosmos with plants and animals and stars and planets and physical bodies. Then you will have something concrete to grasp. And you will have the entire process step by step from where it came from. Right now, we are at a very abstract level. Consciousness, ignorance, cosmic consciousness, or consciousness and cosmic ignorance, parts of ignorance, whatever that is. Deep sleep. There's still, slowly it's beginning to be rooted in experience. See, already something that you know has been mentioned. Deep sleep has been mentioned.
Yeah. One thing is, what about, where does time, space, and causality reside? It's not in ignorance, right? Or is it in the mind?
Time, space, and causality resides in Maya. That will not be spoken about here, but another definition of Maya is time, space, and causality. It is the stage on which the cosmic drama is played. So time, space, and causation are like the stage. If you want to have a play, you have a stage. So what is the stage for this cosmic drama? You require space, you require time, and you require cause and effect, something leading to something else. And then the whole thing will come up. Remember, I think you had asked last time, I forgot to mention, no, Girish had asked that where does this universe come from? And he asked, why this particular universe? Why are we like this? Why are stars and planets like this? Why is life like that? So what does Vedanta say about it? Vedanta says all of this comes because of Maya. The absolute is projected as the many. That's it. But in the many, all these things, different distinctions are there, varieties are there. How do you explain that? At the most, Vedanta will say it is because of the law of causation or causality. Law of causation is causality. Working through time and space, it produces all this variety. If you want further detail, the best answer would be today, would be science. You see, science is, as far as we can understand, even science is limited, but as far as we can understand, we can get much better detailed explanations of what's going on in this universe. Why a certain kind of life is like this? Why does a particular chemical reaction work like that? How are stars powered, the fusion reaction, and so on? Science has provided us much better explanations. So the detailed explanation of how things are in this universe is a scientific question. But and then you say, why not stop with science? No, I was just thinking about it, if you stop with science, 3 fundamental questions cannot be answered. 3 questions. 1 question, why does anything exist at all? Why this thing exists and how it influences other things? Science. But why does anything exist at all? What is existence? That book I told you about, Why Does the World Exist? Jim Holt. So he takes this question to scientists, physicists, mathematicians, computer scientists, philosophers, theologians, poets. Why does anything exist at all? What is existence? That's 1 question. And there Vedanta is actually, it is the science of existence itself, Sat, pure being, isness. The second question that cannot be answered, if you stick to only science as we know it, is consciousness. See, we have run up against the hard problem of consciousness now. You cannot explain. You will end up with brain and nothing more. So consciousness is the second question that cannot be answered, and how important that is. And the third question, which cannot be answered, is the question of value, meaning, ethics, value. Those things cannot be answered in a scientific way. So these things, and notice what does Vedanta say about it? Notice what Vedanta says: Sat, Chit, Ananda. All existence questions point back to Sat. Consciousness points back to Chit. And all questions of value, ethics, happiness, meaning, purpose goes back to Ananda. So this is the answer to the deepest questions, which cannot be touched by science, by the very definition of science as we know it. Yeah. Then
Thank you.
who's the next? Shravani.
Yeah.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaskar.
Yeah, today you talked about space permeating the pot. So, and then just a few minutes back, we talked about the subtle body, and you mentioned it's within the gross body. Now, when we say within, it almost seems that the subtle body is embedded inside the gross body. But then if we think about consciousness, let's say, just the way it pervades and permeates everything. Similarly, the subtle, the mind, is that also not permeating the gross body, like my body and all bodies? Because we are experiencing the whole world, everything in the mind. So it's not inside, as it sounds.
No, I mean, the way we look at it this way, that there are many subtle bodies. There are many causal bodies, many subtle bodies, and many gross bodies. Clearly, there are many gross bodies. You can count here. 70 plus are here, the separate bodies. And the minds are also separate. Are they not? If you ask questions, if you ask for opinions, what does an opinion poll do? It takes the opinions of different minds. It's because the minds are different, thoughts, feelings, ideas, understanding is different. So subtle bodies are also different. Now, where is this subtle body? We find the working of the subtle body in the physical body only. Without the physical body, the subtle body doesn't function. It exists, but it will not function. It's like software and hardware. Software permeates the hardware. It makes it, but it needs the hardware to work, to express, to function. So yes, subtle bodies are limited within the physical bodies, but not limited in a certain sense, because when the physical body dies, the subtle body still exists. It will go on. It is prior to the physical body, and it will outlast the physical body. And the causal body is prior to the subtle body. The causal body is nothing but the defunct state of the subtle body. When the subtle body stops functioning, resolved into blankness, that's the causal body.
Yeah, but I think based on today's discussion, I was thinking more in subjective terms. Like if we take from a subject view, like me, only from my point of view, when I look at it, my causal body, and then from that springs up the subtle body, and then in that subtle body, if I for the moment forget that, let's say I'm dreaming. I mean, is there really a difference between the waking state and dream state in that?
No, so you're going to, so that's a different question. You're going to Mandukya now. So don't go there. Here it's Vedantasara, it's for
I know it's
Vedanta
not,
kid.
It's not Vedantasara, but this question that lingered. So I thought I'll ask.
Yes. Is there a difference between the dream and the waking? Certainly there will be a huge difference depending on your answer to this question. If you say waking and dreaming are two different states and there are distinct properties. So in the waking, we experience an external world which exists independent of our individual minds. And in dreams, we experience an internal world which does not exist apart from our individual minds. Our minds are conjuring up that world. So that's one view. And that's close to the common sense view. Are you with me? That's the common sense view. That's the scientific view. That's the view that the world operates on. I mean, the common sense view, materialistic view, reductionist view, scientific view is that, yes, there is a difference between your waking and your dreaming. Dreaming is entirely subjective. It is you and you only. But the waking world is not you. You are only a tiny, tiny part of the waking world. So that's one view. Does Vedanta accept that? Yes. That's one model in Vedanta. That's the basic model. It is called Srishti Drishti. Srishti Drishti means God has created the universe, and then we sentient beings are placed in it. And that's a common sense approach. And that's easily acceptable. And that's what Vedantasara will proceed on. But remember, we are talking from a Mandukya perspective. There is another perspective which Advaita Vedanta also follows, another model, that there is no difference between the waking and the dreaming. Remember, in Mandukya, we put in a lot of effort to show that there's no difference between waking and dreaming. So if you erase that difference, it has dramatic consequences for the reality of the world, an external world. It becomes as subjective as your dream world. So from a Mandukya perspective, there is the causal state, deep sleep, and there is a waking, there's a dreaming state. What is the dreaming state? Your dreams are also dreams, and your waking is also another kind of dream, maybe a little more permanent kind of dream, but nothing outside, your subjective being. So that's a very dramatic step. That's not the normal way we think. Now you might ask, but which one is it? Which one is it? If you ask, are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking, and it seems more logical, the second one. I mean, it means more than the first.
It's logical, it's philosophically deeper, it's a more radical view of Advaita Vedanta, but it's just one more model. It's not, that's also not the reality. Remember, from an Advaitic perspective, suppose you ask, you're saying this model and that model, plus tell me which one is real. Advaita will say, I already told you. Text number 33. Only Brahman is real. You're waking, dreaming. It's not that the dreaming world is, everything is a dream. And no, that is false. That world exists in my mind. World, your mind, your individuality, those are also all false, according to Advaita Vedanta. Only Brahman is real. Vedanta is very simple that way. Then what is all these? What are these models? From an Advaitic perspective, these are upayas. These are methods. These are ways of, you remember the donkey being tied and untied?
Right.
These are ways of untying the donkey.
Yeah, a better explanation of Maya, as so to speak, the world we
better in what way? Listen carefully. Better in one way and not better in another way. Better in one way, which way? Logically better. Mm-hmm. It is more economical. You heard of Occam's razor? So a more elegant explanation. So that is, it would satisfy a mathematician better, a philosopher. But it's not better in another way. Which is the other way? Why is it not better? It's not better because it's not normally what we think of. If you actually say, so what is all this teaching, all of it, what is it about? It's for taking us to liberation, to enlightenment. If you start off by saying, you have to regard your waking like your dream, our answer will be, are you serious? I can philosophically think about it. Even I as a monk can't live like that. So we make a very practical distinction between waking and dreaming. Imagine right now, if you were told that this is a lucid dream, do you really live like that? No, it's very difficult. So most people would be dissuaded from this kind of teaching. If you say, start by regarding your waking life as a dream. No. Take your waking life to be real, more real than the dream life, and then start from there. We will take you to Brahman. The whole point is not to regard the waking life as a dream. The whole point is to realize it is Brahman and Brahman alone. So this accepting the waking as distinct from the dream, as ordinary people do, as most of us naturally do, that might be a better technique. Mm-hmm. I quoted Bradley last time. He said, it is not necessary that the truest philosophy will be the best religion. It is not necessary that the truest philosophy will be the best religion. Most logical philosophy, most elegant philosophy may not be the best method. What is logical may not be psychological. Right? Yeah. So you are saying it's better logically. Is it better psychologically?
Yeah, but instead of throwing it out of the window, I understand, like for a practical day-to-day transactions, is good. The first one you say that's probably more useful, utility-wise. But then this also should we not also keep it along? Just as something
Absolutely. Absolutely, and they should keep it, and that is Mandukya is actually based on this model which you are talking about. Mandukya insists that you should Mandukya Karika, Gaudapada, he insists that you should regard the waking and dreaming as equivalent. You cannot understand Mandukya until you take that big step. Even that is not radical enough. There is a third model. There's a third model, which is called Ajatavada, non-origination, where the universe is regarded as equivalent to deep sleep. Why are you stopping at dream? Regard it as this complete subject-object distinctionless blankness, deep sleep. The world is like that. That is even more radical. What they are saying is, what was there in deep sleep, in your deep sleep, not a bit more is there in your dreams or your waking. This vast world you're seeing in waking is exactly the same thing that you saw in your deep sleep. It's perfectly all right. There's no problem here. There is nothing to be achieved, nothing to be realized, no problem at all to be resolved. Exactly what was in deep sleep is here now. What a very radical position. That's called Ajatavada, non-origination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just a final thing. So should we take this approach like the space exists inside the pot? So that's the day-to-day transactional world.
Yeah.
Is that the thing? I mean, of course, I do not mean consciousness in that state. Like in this case, the subtle body. Subtle body is something encased.
Yes. Subtle bodies are limited to the physical body as far as practical purposes go, but not limited in the sense of, for example, death of the physical body is not death of the subtle body. It will continue. It did not begin with the physical body. It will not die with the physical body. In that sense, it pervades, it is beyond the physical body. All right. Quickly. Yes. Who's next?
Rekhaji, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. Swamiji, I mean, you alluded to it in text 46, but it's a problem that I've been grappling with for some time. You know, if Brahman is experienced here and now, in the waking and dream state, I understand that absolutely. But somehow in deep sleep state, that experience seems to be ex post facto. I mean, today when you were talking about it in text 46, it did say that, you know, that experience is recorded in the subtle body. But could you elaborate on it? Because that's something that's really getting me bogged down quite a bit.
Yes. Experience, you know what experience is like? Experience is consciousness plus object. Think about it. All experiences are consciousness plus object. Now, most of our experiences, what we see in the waking and in the dream, are consciousness plus object, but in between the mind is there.
Correct.
So the mind contributes many things, mind plus the sensory system. So the experience becomes visual, auditory, olfactory, different kinds of sensory modalities are there. Plus the mind contributes, I see, I hear, I like, understand, I remember, I forget. All of that is contributed by the mind. And that's our general idea of experience. Consciousness, through the mind and sensory system, experiencing objects. Waking state. Consciousness, shining upon the mind, experiencing objects there, dream state. Mind shuts down. External world is not cognized. Thoughts and dreams are not cognized. Consciousness shines upon this blankness, deep sleep state. We hesitate to call this an experience because our common idea of experience is waking and dreaming, where the mind is active. When the mind shuts down, we feel there is no experience. But experience is consciousness shining on an object. Presence of an object, illumined by consciousness. Absence of an object, illumined by consciousness. Why? Because the very nature of consciousness is effulgence, luminosity, illumination.
But why is the experience, in a sense, after the event, you know, ex post facto? That is because when you wake up.
Now you tell me why is it so?
Well, I mean, I could say,
What distinguishes the deep sleep from experience, so-called within quotes, from waking and dream experience? What
the
distinguishes
mind.
it?
It's the mind is not.
Mind is not there. That's why it seems to be exposed factor. Why? Because the experience we are used to, what you talk about when you talk about experience, is I am seeing, I am hearing, I am thinking. What's this? It's the mind. When this is absent, you know why this problem is there? Because we have not sufficiently distinguished the mind from consciousness. We are mostly talking about mind and consciousness mixed up together. And that's what we understand to be experience. If you clearly distinguish between mind and consciousness, you will not be so worried about the absence of the mind. So there is no experience. Consciousness is still there. The problem is not the activity or inactivity of the mind. The problem is the inability to distinguish mind and consciousness.
But sorry to belabor the point, Swamiji, but at that point, am I not just accepting it merely because I'm being told? Because in the other two states, waking and dreaming, I can actually, feel it. I can understand it. I'm aware of it. But in the deep sleep, there is nothing since the mind isn't there. And that's where that bothers me further, because it almost brings me back to the spot that the mind has a role to play. I mean, I know intellectually I understand what we've learned, that,
Yes.
It's the mind that's really, in a sense, also the biggest impediment in realizing my true nature, my true self. But still, I mean, I'm getting very caught up there.
I know. And it's very natural. You know what is happening? It's like this. There is a mirror. And I, the original face, I'm looking at the mirror and I see myself reflected there. That is what I call experience. Now, I am not aware of my original face apart from the mirror and the reflected face. When the mirror and the reflected face are not there, I'm saying the original face is not there. Sri Ramakrishna says in one place, he says, if I always look at my reflection, people will think I'm mad. What was that all about? It's this. We think when the mirror and the reflected face are not there, there is nothing. But if you know, you're aware of the original face, like we normally, ordinary people, we are aware. I don't need to see myself reflected all the time. I'm there, I'm perfectly all right. Sometimes I can take a mirror and look at my face, fine. But neither the mirror nor the reflected face is of importance to me, because I know I exist apart from all of that. I'm quite clear about it. When a mirror is necessary, I will use it. Otherwise, I can let it go. But there's something that the mirror does, which the original face cannot do. The mirror gives me my original face as an object. And if by misfortune I'm unaware of the existence of my original face, if there is something called the avarana, the veil on my understanding, and my only awareness is mirror and reflected face, then I will say everything is gone. You're telling me that there is an original face, but I don't see it. It's like that. Don't chase that experience.
Okay.
Rather, what you should do is inquire. Use the Vedantic method of inquiry, Dridrishya Viveka, Panchakosha Viveka, Avastatraya, to get a grasp, even a mental, intellectual grasp of what is actually the original face, the original consciousness. Then this terrible clinging to a mind-generated experiences will not be there anymore. Right now, you can think about it this way. You have two kinds of experiences: presence of objects, absence of objects. Try to think about deep sleep as an experience of complete absence. Can you? It takes you to the verge of enlightenment. There is something shining in deep sleep, something looking upon the blankness of deep sleep, that you cannot catch as an object, because its object is always a reflected face.
Maybe that's the mistake I'm making, Swamiji, that I am still looking for the mind and therefore looking for an object.
Yes, you're looking for the 10th person outside.
Yeah.
Mhm. All right, it's late today, but we'll quickly, let's hear the questions at least.
Good evening, Swamiji.
Good evening, Dimitri.
A question about the purpose. Like, if I understand correctly, like Ishvara has a purpose of maintaining the universe, the Maya, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And let's say when a Jiva gets enlightened and the body dies, what's the purpose of the subtle body then?
The subtle body also, if you get enlightened, there won't be the subtle body also. Upanishads speak of it. Until enlightenment is there, when the physical body dies, the subtle body continues and gets newer and newer physical bodies and goes from lifetime to lifetime. But upon enlightenment, when that particular physical body dies, it goes back to nature, and the subtle body also will go back to nature. Subtle body is also a product of nature. We will see. Subtle bodies also will be produced.
Mm-hmm.
Ishvara is going to roll out like the vaccine, I think, billions of subtle bodies and distribute it now very soon.
So which means that at this point in time, the experience of Maya stops. You don't sort of, it's not the model like in Christianity or other religions when you become an angel and you have a role to play together with God in order to do this and that.
Correct. So a theistic idea would be your individuality is maintained. That means your subtle body will still be there, and you go to a higher spiritual world and maybe a higher spiritual purpose. So that's a theistic idea. In the Vedantic idea is that you always were the infinite and you realize that you are the infinite. Purpose, when we talk about purpose is always limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose is always restriction, always weakness, always imperfection.
So
when
does it mean that
when there is imperfection?
So then does it mean that there is a Ishvara eventually will cease to exist because it's also a limitation?
No. There's one model of Advaita Vedanta in which there are some beginningless and endless entities like Ishvara. What you see, when you say cease to exist, there are two kinds of ceasing to exist. One is switch off, nothing, finished, destroyed, gone, forever. That's one ceasing to exist. Another is the ceasing to exist when you realize a dream is a dream or a movie is a movie. So once you see that the movie and all the characters in the movie to be part of the movie, have they ceased to exist? In a sense, yes. You realize they never were real, but they are appearances. In that sense, Ishvara and the world can continue. There's no problem at all. The movie can play on. Once you realize it's a movie, it's fine. You don't have to switch off the movie.
Thank you.
Yeah. The difference in Advaita Vedanta is not that something has to be changed. It is only difference between ignorance and knowledge. Not realizing and realizing. The untying of the rope which ties the donkey, so-called rope which ties the donkey.
Thank you.
Girishji?
Yes.
Thank you, Swamiji. A follow-up to why this that I asked last time. According to ongoing Darwinian evolution, Homo sapiens may evolve into super intelligent beings who reflect Brahman in their neural hardware better than we do today. So are we sort of heading into sort of a utopia of populated by Jivan Muktis eventually? And is that consistent with Advaita?
I would again say yes and no, because evolution will only give us better bodies, better physical bodies, and better subtle bodies, maybe more powers manifested in our subtle bodies. So if we spiritually evolve, and that's what what nature is making us do, is to spiritually evolve lifetime after lifetime until we become enlightened. This particular body is enough to get us to enlightenment, human birth. But superior bodies and superior subtle bodies can only give us more power in nature. in Maya. So those are in Indian cosmology, they were called devatas. It will come again. Devatas. Devatas literally, it means shining beings. So they have extraordinary power. They are like Superman and whatnot, Spider-Man, with much more power than us. But that's still within Maya. And they may or may not be enlightened. And are we going to become super evolved beings? Maybe not. What might come about is this artificial intelligence powered robot bodies with extremely much more capable than us. That might happen. Yes. All right. On that science fiction note, let us end today. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.